Welcome to the West Partnership learning videos. This is for National 5 Health and Food Technology, continuing on with nutrition. Please remember that you can pause and rewind or replay this video as many times as needed, and the more notes you take, the better for your own learning. So today we're going to be learning about minerals, and these are part of the micronutrients that we are going to be talking about. So vitamins and minerals are part of the micronutrients groups, which means we need these in our diets in smaller amounts. Today, by the end of this slide, we will be able to identify sources of calcium, iron and sodium, which are the three main minerals that we're going to be focusing on, and explain the effects that these have on our health. So first of all, we're going to be looking at these three. So looking at calcium first of all. Calcium, we know already, combines with phosphorus to create calcium phosphate, which is the main material that gives our bones and teeth their hardness. So if you're lacking in any of these, if you're lacking in calcium or phosphorus, and as we spoke about in our vitamin slide, vitamin D, if you're lacking in any of these minerals or vitamin D, then you would be at risk of having weak bones and teeth. It is also required for the maintenance of bones and teeth, as well as helping to, in later life, prevent osteoporosis, which is brittle bone disease. We need calcium in our diets to build up bone mass until the age of 30, so particularly children and teenagers need the most calcium in their diets because that is their peak time for bone development. As we get older, our bones are fully grown, we're not growing anymore. However, we still need to maintain our intake of calcium to maintain our bone mass. Calcium also helps to clot the blood after we've had an injury, and it's required for the functioning of muscles and nerves as well. We get calcium from, I think the most commonly known one would be milk or cheese or yogurt, but also from tinned fish with bones in it because the bones are high in calcium. And so that would be things like sardines or salmon. Green leafy vegetables, again, fortified white flour. So again, fortified means that the calcium would have been added into. And if we were not getting enough calcium in our diets, we would see that over a period of time, it would lead to our bones becoming softer. It would mean that we had poor bone development, which in children could lead to rickets, and also it could lead to dental problems. So we could end up with dental caries as well. If a bone is broken, it would maybe take longer to heal as well if we were lacking in calcium. And osteoporosis, like I've mentioned, brittle bones in later life, and adults' version of rickets, which is osteomalacia. Again, because calcium is required to help blood clot after an injury, blood loss would be a side effect if we weren't getting enough calcium in our diets, as the blood does not clot well after having an injury. So next, moving on to the functions of iron. Now, iron is a component of hemoglobin. Now, hemoglobin is a substance that forms red blood cells and basically transports the oxygen all around your body. Hemoglobin gives the red blood cells their colour, and if we were lacking in this, we would feel really tired. Now, iron is also needed for the production of red blood cells, which help to prevent anemia. And anemia is a diet-related disease from lacking in iron, which would mean that you were very tired and lethargic and low in energy. Sources of iron, particularly red meat, especially liver, kidneys, and corned beef. However, if you were a vegetarian and you weren't taking these in your diet, then again, fortified flour and bread, green leafy vegetables, dried fruit, and cocoa and plain chocolate will also be high in iron. Now, I've mentioned that if we are not getting enough iron in our diet, we would feel tired, lacking in energy and weakness, and over time could develop anemia. But if we have too much iron in our diets, um, mainly in our liver, this can be really poisonous for our bodies as well. Certain groups will need more iron than others in their diets, particularly if you think about babies. They're growing rapidly, they will need a high amount of iron in order to supply their bodies and produce the red blood cells that they're going to need as they're growing. And milk, that is mainly their diet, contains very little amounts of iron in it. Girls and women starting their periods and going through loss of blood every month. This means that iron is lost during this time, so it needs to be replaced. Quite often, teenage girls, when they start this, often will end up feeling really tired and weak and end up developing anemia because they're not used to losing that blood every month. Pregnant women, iron requirements increase during this time as well to allow for the development of their baby's blood supply. Next, moving on to sodium. So, sodium is essential for maintaining the correct body fluid balance in the body. And it is also required for the correct muscle and nerve activity. So, if you're not getting enough sodium in your diet, you may experience muscle cramps. Quite often, we will get sodium. It's salt, table salt. So it's important that that when you are cooking and things, that you are not adding additional salt to these dishes because you are increasing your sodium intake. Foods like bacon, cheese, crisps will all be high in sodium, but quite often, mostly processed foods like Chinese meals and things are really high in sodium as well. Now, if we are getting too much sodium in our diet, we are at risk of high blood pressure as well as strokes and coronary heart disease. So this is something that the government push every year to try and lower our intake of sodium because it's found naturally in all these foods that we eat, and yet we still add it to our foods as well. Again, I have mentioned that if you're not getting enough sodium in your diet, particularly during exercise, you could experience muscle cramps. So what you can do is you are able to look at your diet yesterday. What did you eat yesterday? And identify any minerals or sources of minerals in the foods that you ate. If you had cheese, what mineral would you find in cheese? Calcium. And if you had bacon for breakfast, then you would know that it would be high in sodium. Again, like you are going to have a build-up of these really good useful resources for your revision, you're going to be able to use this PowerPoint and your course notes book to help you create a summary of the effects and health of calcium, sodium and iron. And this is something that you'll keep and look back on when it comes time to revise. So by the end of today, you should now understand sources of calcium, iron and sodium and why we need these in our diets. What are the effects of having these in our diets? And that is minerals, which is part of the micronutrients that we have been learning about. So before we go, I would like you to again summarise in 3 points what you have learned today. And the next lesson, we will be moving on to water and dietary fibre.